Good evening. I hereby call to order the action session of the Board of School Commissioners for Thursday, May 28th. Would you all please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
United States of America,
and
to the republic
for which it stands, one
nation,
nation, under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
All right. Our meeting this evening is being conducted via video conference pursuant to Governor Holcomb's Executive Order 20-09 and corresponding guidance from the Indiana Public Access Counselor to minimize the risk associated with the current public health crisis. The meeting is being live streamed via the IPS Facebook page and may also be accessed via the IPS website. A Facebook account is not required to view the live stream. President O'Connor was called away to deal with an urgent matter relating to his day job, so I will be chairing tonight's meeting in his absence. Mr. Mulholland, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Arnold,
here.
Commissioner Gore,
Here.
Commissioner Moore,
present.
Commissioner Slack,
Here.
Secretary Collins,
Here.
Vice President Hawkins,
Present.
and President O'Connor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mulholland. We will now adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. Reviewing the agenda, are there any requests for changes to the agenda as presented?
Oh no, ride your bike.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the agenda is adopted. Moving to section 3, opening comments. Does any commissioner wish to offer any opening comments at this time?
Commissioner Hawkins, this is Commissioner
Commissioner Gore.
Gore. I just wanted to make some comments in the beginning, and I wanted to congratulate each of our 2020 graduates and their families and friends, and let them know that their ability to focus and to complete the task of their high school year is commendable. Their educational time has been a challenge, I know, but whatever you do from here on, you know that you can meet the challenge. So good luck, and may God bless you and keep moving forward. I also wanted to say to our staff, before we even start our meeting, for their leadership and the leadership of the IPS district, teachers, bus drivers, custodians, and to all the others that it takes to operate our IPS district. I just want to thank you during these unprecedented times as well for your hard work and commitment to our students and the district. Just a word from our former president, Barack Obama. He said it best, that change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We're the ones we've been waiting for. We're the change that we seek. And so this is so appropriate, I feel, as we continue to seek change in our education system for equity in all aspects of education for our IPS students. We cannot and will not wait.
Thank you, Commissioner Gore. Commissioner Moore, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to ditto what Commissioner Gore just said. I'm not going to repeat any of the things that she said. I think she spoke for all the commissioners for all of us as part of the commissioners on the board, and we truly appreciate everything everyone done, and we definitely appreciate the words that you provided, Mrs. Gore, for the Board of Commissioners at IPS.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore.
Thank you. Good words.
Commissioner Slack, I saw your hands up. I didn't know if that was if you were echoing or if you had a clapping or if you were if you had a comment, just want to give you the floor.
Just echoing. Good
Okay.
job. Yes.
Yeah, right. All right. So we again utilized an online public comment portal to receive written public comments for tonight's meeting. There was this was on the board doc site. One second here, sorry. All right, so I'm going to move on here to the consent agenda. Excuse that. Reviewing the items included in the consent agenda, are there any questions or comments? All right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion and second. Any comments? So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Zach, does that require a roll call at all for the consent agenda, or unanimous, does that suffice?
We'll do similar to what we did. Thank you, Vice President Hawkins. We'll do similar to what we did in the previous meeting. For all items that are unanimously approved on the yay and nay votes, I will just confirm that after the vote, just to confirm that it was a unanimous 6-0 vote. If there are any votes that are not 6-0, after that confirmation, we will do a roll call vote for those items.
Great.
So just
Okay.
confirm that consent agenda was approved by a vote of 6-0 with none opposed.
Great. Thank you, sir. So I will now turn the agenda over to Superintendent Johnson for superintendent report.
Great, thank you, Vice President Hawkins. There are two superintendent reports to be presented this month. The first item 4.01 is an update on our COVID-19 response, which I've given the last 2 months that we've been responding to this crisis. I will focus in on two main areas, specifically the work we continue to do around meal distribution, and then some of the plans that we have underway as it relates to our academics and learning for students. Our meal distribution continues at 16 sites and 2 apartment communities. The meal distribution is taking place on Mondays and Wednesdays, serving any student 18 or younger. They do not have to be an IPS student to take advantage of that. We continue to be pleased with our ability to respond to the need as it has arisen within our community. Since our closures on March 13th, our food service team has served more than 325,000 meals to families and to students. So we're very proud again to be able to meet that need. We have continued to partner with Gleaners Food Bank. You all are aware of that partnership has been underway. The final day for distribution for that partnership is this coming Friday. So that will be the final day of the larger non-perishable boxed items that go to families. Gleaners is shifting into their seasonal or summer program called CARES. We'll have that information on our website for families so they will know where they can still continue to get those supports and resources as needed. But this Friday will be the final day for that specific partnership with IPS. Since March, we have distributed more than 61,000 boxes of food to families during that time at what we are approximating to be a $1.6 million investment from our community who have supported Gleaners and allowed for us to benefit and our families to benefit from that partnership. So very thankful to have had that partnership and collaboration and excited to continue to develop partnerships to support our community and our families moving forward. We will be continuing at the same level of service over summer. So the same 16 school sites where we'll provide breakfast and lunch still on Mondays and Wednesdays. So we'll put those updates on our website next week so families are aware and reminded of those times, but we will be shifting into that summer schedule, which will look basically the same as what we've done over the last couple of months. We've been excited that at the federal level, the USDA has continued to allow for school districts to be able to provide meals with more flexibility. And so we're taking advantage of that flexibility going into summer. So very thankful for that. Definitely want to publicly thank Dina Bond and our food service team who has continued to work during this time, and they've just done tremendous work, along with Deetra Taylor and our transportation team, as our drivers have been really instrumental in picking up those food boxes from gleaners, delivering them to the school sites, and then helping to distribute them to families. So thank you for everyone who has participated in that work. We will wrap up home learning. Our home learning experience wraps up next Tuesday, June 2nd, for our students with virtual graduations. Thank you, Commissioner Gore, for shouting out our class of 2020 graduates. We'll hold virtual graduations for our class of 2020 next Thursday and Friday, June 4th and 5th. So we're very excited to celebrate them in this next step in their journey. As you all know, and I shared, we have purchased the devices that will allow us to go one-to-one. And so the team is doing a lot of work right now in planning for that transition. As we know, that'll be a really important enabling condition as we think about next year plans. So that work continues to be underway from a content standpoint, professional learning for teachers, systems and structures we need to have in place. So all of that work is happening now. And then we continue to pay attention and advocate as it relates to internet connectivity. That is still, a significant gap for a number of students who we serve. And so we'll continue over the course of the summer to advocate federally and at the state level, local level, for resources to ensure that our students and families are getting connected at home, and the systems we need to have in place for that to happen. So that will continue to be an important part of what we do. Next week, families will also be able to, if they have materials in schools, to pick those things up. They are being, each school community is communicating with their families and students about the schedule for any material pickup or drop off. They'll also have access to report cards at that time. In grades K through 8, families will notice a shift in the grading. It will not be the traditional scale that we've experienced because we were primarily paper pencil for K-8. We wanted to make sure that we created what we believe to be the most equitable system for students to receive feedback on how they've engaged during this time. So it won't be grades, but just feedback on engagement. So parents will notice language that talks about highly engaged, or limited engagement, classifying from their teacher a child's engagement, and that's through grades K through 8. In high school or for middle schoolers who are in credit-bearing courses, they will receive a traditional grade. That grade for the fourth quarter cannot be any lower than their third quarter grade. And again, that was an intentional decision. We did provide technology to students so they could keep up with their work, and they need to be able to demonstrate evidence of having acquired those credits to stay on track toward graduation. So we needed to keep that traditional grading scale in place. However, we know everyone has very different home contexts and support networks, and so wanted to make sure students were not, again, penalized for a different home context that they might have in the fourth quarter that made it more challenging. So families will notice those differences, and there will be information provided at schools outlining those things when parents go to school for a student pickup or receive those report cards. The last thing I'll note, and it's the million-dollar question that everyone is thinking about, is what is next year and what is going to happen. We know that we have a lot of guidance that we will be getting from the state. We know the CDC has released guidance. There's lots of information coming into us, and we don't hold the sole decision-making power when it comes to what next school year will look like. That said, we are planning across a number of various scenarios that could play out in the fall. And we've identified non-negotiables that we want to use to guide our planning. So I did want to share those with commissioners this evening. The first is social distancing. We believe that it's going to be important from a health and safety perspective that we are able to execute on social distancing between staff and students to students. So that must be a part of the plan that we ultimately have to execute. We believe that at every facility, we will need to have COVID-specific safety protocols in place, things like regular disinfecting of doorknobs and light switches and common areas and bathrooms. And so making sure those things have to actually be scheduled into the routines of schools in a much more intentional or much more frequent level than we've had before. We also believe that a full-time e-learning option is going to need to be available. I'll talk a little bit about this later, but we'll be launching a survey to families to get their feedback on both their experience so far this year, but also what their priorities are as they think about their children returning to school next year. And we believe we must have an option that would be for families who want their children to stay in a virtual environment for the time being. So that is something that we are also working on. We also know that as our community opens up and if we have students in person and staff in person, the reality is there will be positive cases of COVID-19 that occur. And so we need to be able to be very nimble in being in person and then be able to switch quickly to a home learning environment in the event that a school needs to close for deep cleaning protocols, quarantining, et cetera. So the e-learning implementation has to be nimble and flexible. We know that we're going to need time, an extended time with our students. There has been a tremendous, as you all know, gap in the traditional learning time for our students. And so we have to be thinking very deliberately about how we're going to make up some of the time that has been lost over the past few months. And then finally, paying really close attention to the social emotional learning needs of our students. So we have social emotional learning curriculum at a number of our schools. We have practices in place. Our team has been working really hard on that, even in the time we've been out, but those needs may look and feel different. And so we need to be ready to respond to what those needs are as they emerge with our students, both in a virtual context as well as in person. And so that's going to require some thoughtfulness as well. So those are the 6 sort of guiding non-negotiables that we are using, even as we think about what the scenarios might be in terms of students being in a building, still virtual, or some combination thereof. I will stop there if there are any questions.
Commissioner Arnold.
Thank you. I lost you there for a while. I had to do some technical stuff. So I want to go back and talk a little about or get some more information on the grading issue and how that has changed for the last quarter. One question I have is, what was communicated originally to parents as far as what the grading process would be for the 4th quarter? And I want to make sure I understand what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. So first, tell me a little bit about, were parents told something and then it changed? Or I don't know, just tell me a little bit about that, how the process unfolded and how it was then disseminated out to schools and then to parents.
Sure. So initially, what parents would have seen on our website, we focused in on our high school level because those students are in credit-bearing courses, and we were getting very specific guidance from the Department of Education on what would be sufficient or not be sufficient for students to get their credits or not get credits as related to high school. So that was the focus of our language and what we, once we got that guidance, specifically communicated, specifically around the quarter 3 grade, the quarter 4 grade not being any lower than that quarter 3 grade. So that was what was communicated. In the K-8 space, we did not explicitly talk about the shift in the language of engagement until the beginning of this month of May. And really that was because we knew paper and pencil was going to be the primary way in which students would be able to learn. Some students had access to technology and resources at home. Some students did not. And so the same criteria of your 3rd quarter grade, you know, you can only improve from 3rd quarter. If I'm a child with a computer at home, with a parent who can help me at home, then my opportunity to improve exists. Whereas if I'm a child and mom is still working every day, I don't have someone at home, I don't have Wi-Fi, I don't have internet, and perhaps I'm talking with my teacher or texting with my teacher, there's not the same level of access to that ability to improve. And so it was important to us that we actually remove that traditional grading scale and simply provide feedback on engagement. Our teachers have been working very hard to be engaged with students so that they know what's going on in that home context. And so I trust that they will make the right designation in terms of that level of engagement, understanding that every child has a different circumstance at home. So that was the shift in the K-8 space, is really trying to move away from that traditional grading scale because we did not want a child who perhaps did not have access to be deemed an F or a failure or have a low grade when in fact there were just considerations in their home context that they were not able to control for.
So taking it to the next step, if grades would have been given, my understanding would be, or my thought would be, if a child had very limited engagement because of reasons not due to them, I mean, they didn't have access, whatever, if grades would have been given, very likely those children who are the least engaged would have probably been given F grades. Would that be accurate if grades would have been given?
I think we would have likely said, you know, your third quarter grade or improve. The problem with that, though, is I am still disadvantaged if I don't have resources at home to help me improve. So if I wasn't doing particularly well in third quarter and didn't have resources at home to improve the grade, I'm still disadvantaged versus I'm a child who was doing well and got a chance to do even better. Or I wasn't doing well in third quarter and now I'm at home every day and perhaps mom or dad is home with me and they can really support me in very deep ways. Now I've been able to improve and the other child has not had that opportunity. I think what will be important is in the fall, because we will be one-to-one and have the ability to deploy devices, then that will shift that structure because we will as a district have a way to ensure students have access to a teacher, to the learning platform, in a much different way than we were able to do during this time period.
So we're not assigning letter grades for the last quarter for K-8, but they're being given the designation of highly engaged, or limited engagement.
Mm-hmm.
How does that's not a labeling of a child. I'm not saying you're a failure because you're limited engagement. How is it being put on their records? Is it having any negative or punitive impact on a child's academic record that they had limited engagement that wasn't their fault?
No, it's not being incorporated in their, for instance, their final grade, their overall grade for the year, for instance, it's not being incorporated in that sort of final grade. It really is just a feedback point for that child or that parent to be able to sort of know from their teacher's experience, here was the level of engagement. I hesitate to even try to equate it to a letter grade because the whole purpose was to not do that. Like it was really just to respond to a child's level of engagement.
And I would also think that if it's part of the record, although it's not a grade, if a teacher is going to get a student next year, I would think being able to look at that on that child's record and say, oh, Susie had limited engagement, so I know I need to put some extra support for that child. I mean, could it also be seen as a positive way that the teachers in the next year would be looking at that and you know, seeing what maybe the needs are of the child for the next academic year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it could. I mean, the positive is that over the course of a whole school year, we're talking about a a shorter amount of time. So over the course of a whole school year, if you're looking at information about a child, you have a much more comprehensive picture than the time that we were in this home learning experience. So what I would not want is a teacher to see limited engagement or highly engaged and then make a course of assumptions based on that one thing. I would want them to see, well, how did they do, on their grades during the time of the year when they're actually in person with their teacher every day? What did their interim NWEA data say? Let me talk to that teacher. What kind of student was the child in class? Talk with that parent. So there's lots of different data points. This should certainly not be one that would define a child, in any particular way.
Would it also help us then determine which children that we absolutely know need more equipment and internet access? Will that be a part of it too? That we'll
yeah.
say?
Right. Again, it could. So if I'm a teacher who perhaps, I talk with my student on the phone or I texted with them because they don't have internet at home. And so we were working on a, part of the home learning materials over the phone. That's not a child who was engaged in a limited way. That was an engaged child. They engaged in a different way. They still might have that need. So again, this one data point is just that. It's one data point, and certainly the experience of our students over the course of the year is bigger than that one data point.
Okay, so we're not defining the child or punishing them because for whatever reason that they had no control over, that they did not potentially have the support to fully engage in the learning experience for the last quarter.
Correct. And again, I want to be clear that was our structure and system for this period of time, given how quickly we had to pivot, from March 13th to now. As we think about this one-to-one structure in the fall, it will look different because the resources we'll have available for all of our children will be different.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your answers.
Sure.
Commissioner Moore, I saw your hand raised. Commissioner Moore, you're on mute.
My mouth is moving, but nothing is coming across, right? I wanted to thank Commissioner Arnold for bringing forth all those additional impacts so families will understand. If I understand it correctly, Superintendent Johnson, no one will receive a grade lower than what they had in the third quarter. Is that correct?
In the for our high school students and our middle schoolers who are in those credit courses, correct?
Okay, and so what we was trying to do is trying to ensure that we had enough engagement as we started a new program in which our district never had the opportunity to be involved in the past. Is that correct?
Right. I would frame it as saying, because we made this shift to home learning where all of our children are in a virtual environment, and that was the only means by which we could instruct them. It was important to put a system in place that did not unnecessarily penalize children for things they could not control.
So that's what I was going to ask. That was going to be my final question, which is no child was penalized for their ability to be able to engage with us due to any technology issues or because of some of the challenges they may have had with their parents and themselves in trying to do home learning. We were trying to just ensure that our students had an opportunity to get accustomed to what we may have to do in the future and what some schools have been doing overall, and allow them to be able to be engaged with our teachers, our instructors, and counselors as we continue to move forward. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure, because I want parents to know that we did not want to penalize our students and make them believe that because we had to pivot so quickly to something different that they were going to be harmed. We wanted to ensure that they was comfortable, that they understood, that we cared about their learning, and that we was trying to implement new tools that we knew that were not there before, and that no one was going to be harmed with a grade lower than what they currently have. Their grades could go up though, correct?
And yes, 9 through 12, they could go up. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Collins, I saw your hands.
I was beginning to wonder if you even saw my hand up there. Okay, so The whole issue with the engagement thing is, and we understand that teachers at all times are attempting to connect with parents, with guardians. And so there has been data collected over time, over this particular time especially, whether what the problems were, if a child didn't have a device or if they didn't have an adult that could help them, or English support or whatever, or special needs support, all those things. So then I think what the problem was is that parents felt like all of a sudden they were being judged as being either in limited engagement or engagement or high engagement. And so the whole idea of engagement is, what does that mean? How many times does a parent or a teacher or a child have to connect to the internet to be engaged? And so I think we need to refine that part of our system. I would say that, telling people that whatever their third quarter grade was, then it can't go down, and that has had some difficulties also, because it also, for teenagers especially, it gives them the option of either getting on engaging or just taking that third quarter grade. And so I think that this whole grading process needs to be refined. And I would hope that there would be teacher input, because using the Power School and the Edmentum especially for high school and whatever programs the elementary schools teachers are using, I would hope there would be some in coordination of information to strengthen this whole grading process. I know we're all doing something brand new, and there's going to be bugs, and it's working the bugs out. That's the important thing. So
yeah, totally agree. And I think there is a trade-off. There's a trade-off for all of those decisions. It was a matter of what trade-off are we more comfortable with right now. Completely hear the point around, the motivation and investment for our high school young people, and how you navigate that, which is why in the e-learning initiative and that planning that we're doing now, to your point, Commissioner Collins, that we are thinking about, what's the professional development and support for teachers to leverage those platforms really well. What is the platform that is shared across teachers, so you don't have families feeling like they have to learn 6 different things for every teacher that they have. How are we grading students as we think about access, if we're going from an in-person environment and then we got to go back to a home learning environment? So those are all, as you said, questions that we're figuring out. This is the first time we're having to navigate this space and figuring out what's working and not working, while trying to be as fair and as equitable for all of our students as possible.
Any other questions or comments for Superintendent Johnson? All right. Well, I just want to add, I guess, that I don't want to discount what you shared with the board and the community prior to the important conversation about grading. Just acknowledging the moving of mountains that took place, at least through today. 61,000 boxes, $1.6 million of investment from our partners. We're so thankful for that, but also thankful for, again, the team, the food service team, the transportation team, our teachers. I mean, this has been a collective effort that everyone has put in place. And, I think what we have acknowledged is, and this has been continuous, is that this pandemic has exposed and laid bare the inequities that our community see, that they were there, now they're even more exposed and more vulnerable. And so my point is that I appreciate the approach as we kind of come back to the grading piece. About that has always been the point. I think what I'm hearing and understanding from these conversations is that's always been the place where we start from, is a place of serving, a place of equity, a place of doing the right thing for all kids, regardless of their circumstance. And so knowing that, I acknowledge that, we know that there are students that don't have access to technology, don't have a parent or guardian by their side, or for whatever reason, health, job, whatever it might be. And so, I recognize that this wasn't perfect, and neither was March 13th, 2020, when the world changed. But I just want to again commend you and your team, and our teachers and counselors and social emotional experts and special education teachers and our partners as well, for just stepping up and helping us get to where we are today. So didn't want to ignore that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, work in progress. We'll continue to work very hard to do our best by our students. The second item 4.02, is an update to our staff dependability administrative guidelines. Mindy Schlegel will present a brief update. It actually does not require board action, but wanted to make you aware.
Thank you, Superintendent Johnson. Good evening, commissioners. This is a really short edit. We revisit all of our policies on an annual basis, and then also the administrative guidelines, which is really how we administer the policies. And so we just, this is just an edit. You learn through doing, and we found sort of a loophole that we revised and fixed. So that's the edits that's included in the guidelines that we'll start to use moving into the summer and next year. That's my really quick update.
All right, I see hands from Commissioner Collins.
Okay. And are we talking about the dependability guidelines for policies? And if so, then I would like to just have a question or maybe a comment about the 5 consecutive days due to some illness. Because of this whole possibility, if a person gets sick with COVID-19, there is a possibility that they could go into the hospital. Does the wording accommodate that person that does not, like an emergency, or a person that doesn't know that they are going to go in the hospital and they will be out for more than 5 days?
Yeah, in fact, this is like, you can kind of picture this as completely separate from the COVID sort of crisis.
Okay.
So this was really addressing, we had a couple of instances of sort of people who are chronically absent, and we track absences over what we call occurrences. And so it's not about the number of days, that would actually be one occurrence. So if I'm out, like if I get the flu, I might be out for 5 days, but that only counts as one occurrence. It doesn't count against me, if you will. And we've made lots of exceptions around, in fact, we pulled back our attendance policy in general this spring until the Emergency Leave Act was enacted by Congress. So that's basically, once you get quarantined for any reason, or you actually get diagnosed with COVID-19, you kind of move into you're protected under all of the Federal Leave Act. So yeah,
that's good to know.
Sort of like normal attendance management for
yeah, thank you, Mindy. That's good to know.
Commissioner Gore. Commissioner Gore, you are muted at this moment.
Does it make any difference to our FMLA now? Is it extended or for COVID or?
Oh, for COVID?
Our FMLA.
Yeah, you basically qualify for a paid leave under the, it's a different piece of legislation, but yeah, you qualify for a leave.
Is it longer than usual, or do you have to keep coming back, and are we paying, or is it still the same rules? I didn't quite understand.
Well, it's similar. It's all dictated by medical documentation. So you're not allowed to come back from regular FMLA unless you have medical documentation that says you're fit for duty, you're able to work. It's very similar under the Emergency Leave Act. So you're symptom free, you get like a medical release.
Okay. And is it now just for immediate family, or is it, or do they have to share if it's a parent, or?
Do you mean if, so you're still
Order.
talking
I
about
guess that's all I'm asking.
the emergency leave rules? I should have reviewed them before. So it depends. So if you have a dependent, I would have to go back and look. It's actually posted on our website. We drafted guidance that sort of made it plainer language. But if you are caring for someone, it also covers a lot of. We didn't have very many people apply for it, but folks who have children who've lost childcare, they were protected under the a section of the Leave Act. So they could, same thing, they could apply for FMLA. They were guaranteed a certain rate of pay because they were basically had to stay home and care for children instead of work full time. So so yeah, it had several provisions under it, and we got that information out to staff. It's on the website.
Okay, do we think we might need to explain a little bit more, or just explain at that time? Do we need to explain in our policies? I guess that's what I'm asking.
For the emergency care?
For the FMLA, yeah, and that emergency care.
Most of it's case by case, and they reach out to the benefits team and they sort of shepherd them through that process.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, I don't see any more questions. Oh, Commissioner Slack, I saw your hand up.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I did have a question. Mindy, can you explain to me what percentage of our employees are being affected by this change we're about to make?
Can you say a little bit more what you mean?
What percentage of our employees are being affected by this change? Like, is it 20% of them that are calling in absent all the time? What percentage is really being affected by this?
A very small percentage.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mindy. Superintendent Johnson, back to you.
Superintendent was kicked out. She's logging back in. Sorry.
Okay. Is this the where we plug in the Jeopardy theme music?
Commissioner.
Patrick, while Superintendent Johnson is logging in, you may review the item I think we're moving into new business. You might remind commissioners of the changes that were made and what the document does in terms of the annual profile amendment.
I can certainly do that, and I'm happy to share my screen to show the document if that's helpful, but that seems to be disabled currently. Is that possible to change that so that I can share the document?
Hey, Patrick.
Yes.
1 second. I see Commissioner Moore's hand was up. I wanted to, I didn't know if that was a question related to the previous topic or if that was a question related to where we're going. Commissioner Moore.
Okay, I was just going to say that I love Commissioner Slack's shirt. She's so glad to be private. I mean to be public. I'm happy that she's public too. I was just trying to fill in the gap while I was waiting on. I'm sorry.
All right. Thank you. All right, Mr. Harrell, my apologies.
No, you're fine. If it's possible for whomever is the host to either share the document, I'm going to go, it is not possible. Okay, so I'm going to talk through the document that is posted on Board Docs. It is in the agenda under New School Corporation Profile Amendment. And it is titled IPS Annual School Profile Amendment. And commissioners, good evening. You will notice we did make several changes based on your recent feedback. The context for this document is every year the state requires that all school corporations give a comprehensive list of any changes, and they specifically ask for, first of all, any new school openings that will occur, second, any school closures that will occur, third, any building reconfigurations, mainly meaning changes of grades served at that building, 4, name changes, and 5, baseline reset requests. And they ask that we submit it based on that criteria. For some context on that, when they say something like closure. What they are specifically meaning is there a school that currently uses a certain state ID number that will either no longer house students or will use a different state ID number? So in most of the cases that we're going to go through here, the state will consider the school as closing because it is no longer using its old ID number. But in nearly all of these cases, the school itself is not closing. What's actually happening is the ID number that is associated with IPS's local education agency, LEA, is no longer going to be used. And one of our innovation partners is instead going to request a new ID number for new accountability reasons because they are a separate organization. The school will continue in operation. The students at that school will continue and have a pretty much seamless experience, although the new operator will be able to bring in their new programming. So it is unfortunate that the state requires us to use the term close because in most cases that in the common parlance doesn't make sense. But according to the state's definition, it does. So I'm going to go through those 5 categories, starting with new school openings. The first new school opening is Emmerich Manual High School. As you all know, Emmerich Manual was operated under a state takeover by the state in partnership with Charter Schools USA. That school is being handed back to us, so we need to request a new school number. Again, this is one of the cases where the school is not new or opening, but operating under IPS's LEA is. And that school specifically will be operated at grades 10 through 12 by our innovation partner, Crystal House Academy, and it will lose a grade in our LEA each year, and then out of our LEA, it will grow a grade. So next year, it will be 10th through 12th grade. The following year, it will just be 11th through 12th, and the year after that, it will just be 12th grade. Next on the document that hopefully you have in front of you are the list of school closures. And again, see above for the note about school closures as a specific terminology that the state uses, because almost all of these that we're going to go through, the school is not closing, but it is changing in accountability. So first, we've got Phelan at Francis Scott Key. That school has been a longstanding innovation partner school. For this entire time, it has been operating under IPS's LEA. Next year, the Phelan organization will use their charter organization, which is the way they've set up School 48 to operate, as well as School 93. So this will be consistent across all of their innovation schools that they will use a charter. So we will close down the state number associated with the school, and they will open up a new one. Similarly, and I referenced this, Lewis B. Russell will stop operating in our LEA and will start opening under Phelan Leadership Academy's LEA. And so again, the state considers that closing because we will no longer use its current number. The Phelan Leadership Academy will use a separate school number. In a very similar way, Stephen Foster, which is converting to an innovation school, will stop using our number and will open under the Path Schools LEA, but again, will continue in operation. And then similarly, Emma Donnan is being handed back from the state, and we are turning that over to the Adelante organization. And so both Emma Donnan Elementary School is being handed back to us. So we need that school under its current number to close. And then similarly, Adelante will request that they have a new number under their organization for that to open. And then the one exception to that note about closure is Howe Middle and High School. That's on this list because for the 2020-2021 school year, it will not operate with students. Now, beyond that, we don't know what will happen because, as you all know, the district is collaboratively working with the community, especially the community on the east side, to plan for future use of that building, which could come in many different forms. So we're not trying to say what long-term is going to be, but according to the state, since IPS will not be servicing students in that building next year, their definition means we have to close that school. But again, long-term, we're not sure what the reuse of that building is going to look like, and we're eager to work collaboratively to determine that with community members. Finally on the list is Joyce Kilmer School 69. As you'll recall, years ago, that school converted to an innovation charter school at just grades K through 3. And then in each successive year, that innovation charter grew by a grade. And so IPS's portion of that was under our LEA shrunk by a grade. This year, the 6th grade was the only grade that was in our LEA, and the K through 5 was in the other charters LEA. So next year, there will be no in LEA grades. And so according to the state, that school is closing. But again, Kendesi is continuing in operation, serving all those same students K through 6. Next, I'm going to move on to building reconfigurations. Thrival is one that, as you know, this year didn't have any 11th graders, but in the past was an 11th grade school only. This coming year, it will be a 9th grade school. So we are reconfiguring that from an 11th grade only to a 9th grade only. And you can expect next year at this same time for me to come back and request that we reconfigure that again to be a 9th and 10th grade. And the year after that, it will be 9th through 11th and so on and so forth. This Board of School Commissioners approved that Cold Spring expand from a K-6 school to a K-7 school. So that's reflected on this document. And several years ago, this Board of School Commissioners approved the IPS Butler Lab School to launch as K-6 and grow by a grade. It is currently a K-7 building, and so pre-K-7 building. Next year it will be a pre-K through 8. So that'll be the last year of changes. And then the final group of schools that starts with James A. Garfield and ends with Daniel Webster, we are making changes to those schools primarily for accountability purposes. And so I'll give you a quick background of that. IPS serves a large number of students in pre-K who have special needs, and they are served at special programs. That includes students who are in private placements who receive special education services through IPS. Currently, the way we do that at all of our other grades is that the school that sends the student to that special program maintains the accountability for that student for consistency, and so that accountability is spread fairly across all of our schools. But we have not been able to do that in the past with our pre-K because we only, according to the state, had some of our pre-K, our elementary sites set up as being able to house pre-K students. We would like to change that so that we use an accountability system that is fair and consistent with how we do accountability at all of our grades. So what you see here means that all of our elementary schools will be able to hold accountability for pre-K students. What this does not mean, it does not mean that we are opening, for example, a pre-K site at William Penn. Instead, what it means is if there is a student who lives in William Penn's boundary and is sent somewhere else for a special education pre-K at a specific site, that accountability will be tied back to the school where they are coming from. And again, like I mentioned, that's particularly important in the case of private schools where there is no natural place to have the accountability go other than the neighborhood school. And so that's why we're recommending this grade change here. The last two, we don't have any name changes. I did want to point out that Arlington Woods is an innovation jumpstart, but its official name will not change. And then finally, baseline requests, we are not making any of those. I'll pause there for any questions or comments.
Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Collins. Commissioner Collins, you are on mute.
Sorry. Thank you, Patrick. I was just wondering if every time those reconfigurations where we expand a grade or add a grade in one end or the other, then does that constitute, do we have to, by the state rules, to change the school number? Or is that, no, the reconfigurations are different?
The only time the school number would need to change is if we close a building, then they would stop using the number. If we open a building, so for example, Manual High School grades 10 through 12 will get a new school number. Or if we request a baseline reset, those are the only times when the school number would change. Any other time it stays the same.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Commissioner Gore.
Thank you, Patrick. At the end of this report, it says baseline request none. Could you explain to public what that means?
Yes, ma'am. That is when a school is itself is continuing in operation, but is going through such significant changes that the school corporation would request that the accountability grade be reset. So a good example of that was when we consolidated high schools. Arsenal Tech as one example, but we did this for all of our continuing operation high schools, had such a huge change in the programmatic offerings, the composition of students, and in some cases the staff population, because we brought in new programs and we hired new staff. There was such a huge change at that school that we requested to the state that the accountability system go through a reset. And so that would be an example of a baseline reset, but it can only happen when a school is going through pretty dramatic change.
So none of our schools fit that. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well, Patrick, thank you. I know this is an annual submission, but we certainly appreciate the clarification, kind of around the Department of Education, call it, terminology or nomenclature, particularly around school closure. Just want to make sure that, so I really appreciate your work and appreciate you walking us and the community through that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. I went offline for a quick second, so sorry, my internet's doing something funky, but I'm back with you all on my phone. It's always a backup option. I'll move us to item 6.02, which is a resolution supporting additional financial flexibility in relation to our COVID-19 response. As you all are aware, there have been considerable costs and expenditures as a result.
Superintendent Johnson?
Yes.
Sorry, I think we need to take a vote on the 6.01. There needs to be a vote to approve that, accept that amendment.
Okay.
Yep, that is my apology. Thank you, Zach. Do I have a motion to approve the annual school corporation profile amendment as presented?
So moved.
So moved.
All right, any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries.
I have that recorded as a vote of 6-0 to approve the school corporation profile amendment with none opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you. So item 6.02, again, is a resolution supporting additional financial flexibility as a result of the expenses that the district has incurred in response to COVID-19. Specifically, there are certain costs related to facilities, technology, and equipment that are important and necessary to support our continuing operations. So resolution 7858 would authorize the administration to pay for, reimburse, or finance the necessary and related costs and expenditures through the issuance of bond debt, and to reimburse ourselves back to the beginning of this crisis response time. So Weston, I'll turn it over to you to provide any additional detail regarding resolution 7858.
Thank you, Superintendent Johnson. Board of Commissioners, good evening. On the board agenda, there are two documents. One is a briefing provided to us by Baker Tilly, showing us some of the details related to the potential issuance of some GO bonds to support the expenses that Superintendent Johnson mentioned. Again, the equipment and the technology that is going to be required to support our schools going into the one-to-one device e-learning mode is of importance, and we are trying to show our intent. In the resolution, you'll see is using the word intent, because this is not a public hearing. This is not the authorization to go issue bonds. This is literally almost like a letter of intent to plan to finance some of these expenditures. So as Superintendent Johnson mentioned, the reason why we're doing it tonight is because 60 days back, so back 60 days, March 28th, there are expenditures after that time frame that we are hoping to capture at the time that we issue the bond. And so we've done this in other instances, such as the capital referendum bond and other GO bonds that we've issued in the last few years. I can go in further detail through the Baker Tilly document, or answer questions at this time. Is there a direction that you'd like me to take?
Commissioners, any questions or comments thus far? Weston, I'd keep cruising.
Okay. So I'm going to try to share my screen with the Baker Tilly document. Oops. Let's see. So the Baker Tilly document that we've referenced is posted to the board agenda. These are, again, preliminary financing information. This is information that we will review with our finance committee and then also present further at a public hearing later this summer. So we have outstanding debt. You'll see over the course of time, various issuances that we've had and the amounts that we pay on an annual basis. You'll then also see them broken down between exempt debt and non-exempt debt. Exempt being not subject to the property tax caps, the dark blue presenting the exempt, and those are issuances that were approved by referendums in the 2000s timeframe or in the 2018 election. The issuance that we're potentially looking at is a $5.35 million issuance. It would be issued in 1 year and paid within that same year. The interest looks to be about $116,000 on that $5.35 million, with the debt tax rate being 32 cents. The total tax rate would be up to 32 cents. On slide 5, what we're showing there is that the green section is the debt portion that would be issued and paid in the same year. What the key part of this slide is showing that the tax rate, which is the line graph portion of the graph, that what we're looking at is a tax rate that does not increase above what the amount was in 2020. That's a key policy shift that we are taking as a finance team, and reviewing that with the finance committee in the last month or so. What the next slide shows on slide 6 is that even though the tax rate stays the same, our annual payments would go up. But the key part is issuing debt at a time and at a rate that is the same as the prior year. So that is the information provided by our financial municipal advisors at Baker Tilly. So the action that we're asking for is an approval of the resolution to share the intent to fund the projects, primarily to fund projects related to technology and equipment associated with the COVID-19 response and preparation for e-learning heading into the next school year. Any questions?
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Collins.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Weston. Of course, we have to pay for equipment, and it's all very necessary in my opinion. Is there any grant money that was recently given to IPS that is included in this sum, or is there is that a separate fund? How does that work? And how much of it, how much of the devices will that grant money pay for that we need for, and the platforms and everything else?
The grant money that I believe you may be referring to, there's been 2 significant grant opportunities come up in the last 60 days related to the COVID-19 response. One is the IPS Foundation Education Equity Fund, and that fund is getting off the ground. It's I think over $500,000 at this time. The countywide, citywide e-learning fund, I believe, received some gifts from philanthropic donors, and those dollars are being split among all of the schools in Indianapolis, Marion County. We received about $250,000 with the IPS LEA, and our charter partners associated with our IPS students are expected to receive about $150,000 in addition to that. So total between the e-learning fund from the cities countywide is about $400,000. And right now with the IPS Foundation, my understanding is about $500,000 has been received. So in total, between those grants, upwards of about $1 million. The expenditures that we've had so far that we have sent orders in and plan to receive before the next school year is in the range of $10 to $12 million. And so obviously the grant money would be great to have, and we'd still love to receive the grants. I think the goal right now for the Education Equity Fund from the foundation is about $6 million. So as you see, if we were to issue $5.35 million in debt, and then also receive in total that $6 million from the Education Equity Fund, we will have addressed the $10 million or so need for the laptops and the devices that we've purchased already. Cash flow is out the door already for those devices.
Thank you.
Great.
Weston have one question. So this will, I noticed the terms are 1 year, so that's excellent. It bumps us up in the FY21 period to that amount. How close are we to, I know there are sort of limits on the amount of debt that can be issued for school corporations. How close are we to that ceiling, I guess?
I think so the 5.35 million, if you're talking about having to have a public voting or a public process, the limit is 5.35 million per project. Okay, so the project that we're talking about here is basically the project to fund e-learning technology and equipment, the e-learning platform that we're looking at. What you may also be talking about and referring to is the GO bond capacity, the general obligation bond capacity. And I don't have a slide representing what that specific amount is at this time, but it is around $20 million of capacity that we have based upon the current GO bonds that we have outstanding. And that amount shifts as the NAV shifts and as debts are paid off. I could get you a more exact number from our financial advisors based upon the inquiry you've made if desired.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Commissioner Moore.
I'm sorry, Weston, and I apologize since I'm part of the Finance Committee, but can you tell me, okay, so I recognize the fact that we have purchased significant items in order to be competitive and ensure our children have the right equipment that they need, and we will continue to have to purchase. Can you tell me what the CARE Act has done? Are we going to receive any funds that will pay for the equipment that we're currently purchased or have purchased already?
The CARES Act is a reimbursement. So as we have expenditures and we say, this is what we want the CARES Act money to reimburse us for, those funds will be sent to us. So we have $16.5 million related to IPS LEA. We have about $4.5 million related to our IPS charter partners. The technology could be paid by the CARES Act. It could be something where we say, CARES Act money, we're going to use it to fund our technology. At the same time, our team at the IPS is working through the scenarios of bringing back, staff and the buildings online and transportation and all that it's going to take. There are a lot of unknowns, and the coincidence of having the CARES Act, be approved in March and the technology purchase of the same dollar amounts happen all about the same time, I would say is coincidental, and it's mainly strategic because we have to buy the computers now to get them before the school year starts. What we also have not quantified is the true cost of what it will take to address, social emotional needs, extended time with the lost time of students not as engaged as we've got opportunities to quantify that in the coming days once specific guidelines come down from the feds, from the state, about what does social distancing look like, what we have to adhere to, and what will we be able to make strategic, health and safety shifts in our schools. So a lot has yet to be quantified, and so with additional of looking at our reserves, looking at the debt options we have, we're trying to give ourselves full flexibility of options for when we need to spend money to just meet needs. And literally just look at protecting our students and our staff. We will have the capacity, whether it be financing or whether it be utilizing strategically the reserves or the allocation of CARES Act that we have been allocated.
I appreciate the additional information because it's important that everyone understands that not only is the CARES Act funds going to be utilized for bringing us up to par with other districts, but it's also got to be utilized to ensure that the people are safe when they come to our buildings, that our teachers and our students are taken care of, and that our buildings are taken care of. So I appreciate you providing that additional information so everyone understands that not only are we going to utilize the money that we receive through the CARES Act, but we might also have to incur debt to ensure that we can open up our schools, that we can provide a quality education, and that everyone understands what we are actually spending our money on. And I appreciate the additional information. Again, I apologize because I'm on your committee and I should not be asking you all these questions. I apologize.
I want to highlight there is additional stimulus being talked about, right? And there's a reason why it's being talked about, because this economic shift, this tsunami that we're experiencing on the economy, it's that bad. So we aren't out of the woods even knowing what the revenue is that could be coming in and restricted or unrestricted for certain purposes. So that future stimulus is also in consideration of, if they're talking about it, it's probably because there's still something that people know, when it comes to state funding, when it comes to local funding, there is going to be probably 12 to 24 month window where so much is uncertain in our economy that trickles down from the feds to the state and to the local taxpayer. And ultimately, kids are coming back to school in August, and we need to be ready.
So Weston, would you say that this also helped us to identify the gaps that we've had as it relates to equity within our district? So, I mean, all the additional things that we're doing just to bring us up to par, those are the things that we've been talking about as it relates to equity and the quality of education we've been able to provide to our students over various years. All the things that have occurred within the city of Indianapolis and some of the additional things that have occurred just because of who we are and who we serve.
I would agree with that.
Thank you.
Weston, one more question. So you mentioned that the 5.3 million is the maximum that we can borrow at this point in time through this approach. It's the intent, right, of the approach, for the approach. Do you have I guess I'm still trying to understand sort of what, and maybe I missed this and forgive me if that's the case, but I know we've talked about devices, we've talked about Chromebooks, I've heard tablets, Wi-Fi hotspots, there's infrastructure, there's service in the buildings. It's just not a Chromebook or a device. It's much more than that. It's what it takes to connect our community. And so based upon this purchase, can you be a bit more sort of explicit about what we will be buying with this, and then also what gaps we're still trying to wrestle with? Because to Commissioner Moore's point, this is still, I mean, these gaps have been laid bare for a while, and now they're more intense. And so just trying to understand how big this challenge really is financially to move to the one-to-one method.
So the 5.35 million would fund half of our technology purchase, which we have already made. To sustain this in the future, what we have to look at is our ongoing revenues from state and local funding sources. So our typical property tax funding that comes into our operations fund. We have to look at what comes in from our education fund from the state. And to sustain a one-to-one program, there's going to potentially some significant trade-offs as well, because this is additional money that we previously haven't spent to deliver education services to our students. So when we look at an annual purchase of funds for technology, you're looking at trying to get 4 years out of a device. If we're buying iPads for kindergarten through second grade and Chromebooks for grades 3 through 12, there is a desire to get 4 years out of that. in our first venture of doing that, that is reasonable. That is reasonable from looking at what other districts do who are doing it, what we've experienced on some one-to-one programs within our district already. The ability to sustain that is funded primarily, not primarily, a lot by the issuance of GO bonds across the state of Indiana. And so this is something that's probably going to be a tack in our strategy going forward, is that the GO bond capacity is probably going to have a strategic part of how we support our schools. So when we look at the next couple years, and on slide 5, we see that there's that tax rate to stay at that 32-cent level. We have some capacity in those years to do what we need to do and not raise the tax rate for our local taxpayers. And that is a strategy and an opportunity that other districts who fund and finance their one-to-one primarily use, and that's something that IPS is starting to tack towards.
All right, well, thank you. So if there aren't any other commissioner questions, I would want to see if we have a motion, or do we have a motion to approve Resolution 7858, approving the technology and equipment expenditure reimbursement as presented.
So move.
Second.
Any comments? Commissioner Slack, I see your hand raised.
Hello, Weston. I want to say thank you to your team for putting this together. I want to ditto some of the same sentiments that Commissioner Moore had dittoed, that I'm glad now we finally can make our kids become compatible with other districts that have already been doing this. I mean, it's a way for us to be able to get our kids on track with whether we have absence for snow days, we can make these up with e-learning. It's a good opportunity for us, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Slack. So all in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
I have a record of
Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
6 votes in favor, no votes against. So the motion to approve resolution number 7858 is approved.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you, Weston.
Thank you. Thanks, Weston. Item 6.03 is a property interest transfer with the City of Indianapolis Department of Public Works. DPW is working on a walk improvement project that will impact IPS property near Joyce Kilmer School 69. The project will include the installation of ADA compliant ramps on the corner of Keystone and 35th Street, along with some additional ramps also on the west side of Keystone Avenue. And so the administration requests the board's approval of this 600 square foot property to DPW so they can execute that project. Scott, anything to add?
No. As we discussed, it's preliminary or primarily ADA improvements in that area, which will only help the school and its neighborhood.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Johnson and Scott, we appreciate that. So do I have a motion to approve resolution 7859, approving the property interest transfer as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
I will record a vote of 6-0 for item 6.03, indicating that resolution number 7859 is approved by a vote of 6-0 with none opposed.
Motion carries. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you. Item 6.04 is a memorandum of understanding between the IPS Board of School Commissioners and a collective group of organizations known as JMC. JMC includes Garcia and Associates, Thomas P. Miller and Associates, Cafe, Glick Philanthropies, and Halstead Architects. What the MOU will facilitate is the ability of those organizations to engage in and complete a concept and pre-development initiative around the John Marshall grounds and facilities, with the ultimate goal of purchasing and then transforming that property into a state-of-the-art opportunity hub for Far East Side residents. Built into the MOU, we've created regular communication structure so that the district is kept informed and consistently updated on the work of that group. And this would essentially give them sort of the sacred space to do the exploration on the building, and all of the additional work they need to do to get this planning done between now and then late fall, when there would be hopefully the intent to purchase and move forward with the actual transformation of that building. So we're excited to be engaged with them. We believe this will be a great opportunity for that asset, or for that building to become an asset to the community. Last June of 2019, the district listed the property as surplus property. And so again, to have it be leveraged potentially in this way, I think is a real benefit, and we're excited to support it. Scott, anything that you would add additionally?
It's an opportunity for the side, and also for us to use that building that not only benefits us in allowing someone to use it, but the neighborhood for the long term.
So we request the board to approve that MOU, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Arnold.
Yes, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to make a comment. I think this is a great opportunity for the district to look at some real positive use of Marshall. I know it's been an issue for a long time of what to do with that building. It's an area of high need. I know a lot of the players, they've brought all of the right organizations to the table. Cafe does great work. I know the Glick Foundation has done a lot of things for that neighborhood. Charlie Garcia and Mike Halstead and Mike Higby are all good people that have done a lot in different projects around the city. So I'm very optimistic that this will be a positive thing, not only for IPS, but for that community and for the relationships that they're going to make and create and help people with employment and a lot of other services. So I very much support the effort.
You're muted, Vice President Hawkins.
Yeah, my apologies. Thank you, Commissioner Arnold. Commissioner Moore, I see your hand raised.
Okay, so see what happens is the people always say what I want to say, and I'm not a believer in repeating the same things, but what I want to say is that I live in this community. I lived in that community, and I recognize all the deserts that we have over there. And from everything that I've heard as it relates to the things that they plan to do with Cafe and all the others around workforce development, educational opportunities, and additional with feeding and whatnot, I think it's a great opportunity for us. And I'm a firm believer that many times when we have a need to close some of our schools, that we leave our communities desolated. And so if this will give us an opportunity to do something that is very, very positive around that community, my community, then I am 150% for it. And so I want to say that I appreciate them bringing this opportunity to us. And what I also appreciate is the fact that if they don't deliver, if they can't produce what they have to produce, then our MOU is no longer valid. Is that correct, Scott?
Well, so they'll give us they will bring that back to us after the 4-month time frame, and then we'll have a chance to consider that before any disposal or dispersal of the property would go forward. That's
okay.
Correct.
I think we're saying the same thing. That is that they had 4 months to provide to us evidence that what they suggested they would be able to do, that they would be able to accomplish. Yes. And if it does not occur, then we no longer have to agree to whatever our agreement is around the purchase of our equipment. So I want to salute you, Scott, for looking out for my district, district number 2 on the east side of the city that has a whole bunch of issues that we need to address as a community. So I thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Commissioner Gore.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say that I really appreciate the fact that we're looking into something for one of our surplus buildings. It's wonderful when a neighborhood can have one of our schools taken over and made into something that is positive. I live in the Martindale Brightwood, and School 37, which was a surplus school, is now ran with the Edna Martin, and I truly appreciate the positive efforts that the community can use and beneficial for jobs, for children, and all. So I think this is very positive. And knowing that John Marshall was a great stalwart in that neighborhood, and that I'm sure the community misses that, and the collaboration of having something positive and maybe being able to get jobs for people. So I truly support that and appreciate the fact that Scott has looked into it, and knowing that I've worked with Mike Kigby before, I feel that it'll be a very positive thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gore. Commissioner Arnold, I see your hand raised again. Commissioner Arnold, you might be on mute. Actually, you're on mute.
No, I probably just accidentally did it. No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right, excellent. Let's see if we have any other questions. We're good. Okay. Well, again, thank you, Scott, for and Superintendent Johnson for the updates. Exciting opportunity, and exciting mission, and certainly encouraged by the engagement and the collaboration of different organizations, as Commissioner Moore certainly eloquently shared with the board and the community. So we appreciate your efforts thus far and look forward to next steps. So with that being said, do I have a motion to approve the MOU with JMC Collaborative LLC as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any comment? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed?
All right, I will record a vote of 6-0 in favor of the motion to approve the MOU with JMC Collaborative LLC as presented.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mulholland. Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item 6.05, is a policy on student mental and behavioral services records. A recent bill, Senate Enrolled Act 246, made changes to legislation that governs the maintenance and security of our student mental health records. The statute was amended to require that school corporations pass a policy that outlines the updated requirements related to the maintenance of student mental health records. So the policy is updated to reflect those changes. It will sit for the 30 days with a formal request for approval coming from administration in June. Courtney Flukas, who's a member of our Unified Student Supports team, is on with us. So Courtney, any specific details you would call out for commissioners?
Thank you, Superintendent Johnson. The only piece that I will add is that our community-based mental health partners currently maintain all medical notes, reports, diagnoses, and plans of care. These files are not shared with IPS staff, nor are they reproduced or added to student cumulative files. And similarly, IPS staff who refer students to mental health services maintain these records and do not share or add these files to students' cumulative record. Therefore, IPS is currently compliant with the amended language of the statute.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Collins.
Courtney, am I to understand that if there is a mental health service in a school like Gallahue or something like that, that they are not required to share the students' behavior and mental health records with the school? Is that how I understand it?
So they are unable to share the plans of care or the specifics related to how a student might be treated by their therapists or skills specialists, but they do collaborate with school staff to identify trends in behavior, both in the classroom and what they might be seeing when they conduct their own observations. And they also work with staff taking anecdotal data to contribute to those plans of care.
Okay, all right. Now, is that a common practice?
That is the mandatory practice to abide by HIPAA.
Oh, okay, all right.
Oh, Vice President Hawkins, you're still on mute.
All right, forgive me there. Something's going on with my connection. I apologize for that. So with that being said, this is a policy, Superintendent Johnson, that you mentioned would sit for 30 days, so no action would be required, as I understand at this point.
Correct. We'll come back for formal request next month.
Thank you.
Item 6.06 is a policy on remote learning. Commissioner Slack spoke about this, but as we continue to plan for the school year 2021, our ability to leverage remote or e-learning in the event of a school closure, given our transition to one-to-one, we will have that flexibility at this point. So again, we've crafted this policy and looking at other districts in place for the board's review, with formal approval being requested in June. So this again is a policy we had not had in place before because the infrastructure with technology was not in place. And so we are moving to now put into place the remote learning policy.
Great. Well, thank you. Before we move to closing comments, I want to apologize to those listening. I skipped over section 2.0 regarding public comment. Just wanted to acknowledge that there was one written public comment submitted, I'm sorry, and it was posted on board docs under section 2.02. So I just wanted to share that. And again, my apologies for missing that earlier in the conversation. And so now I'm moving into closing comments. Certainly wanted to offer the floor up to any commissioner that would like to make any closing comments. All right, I'm going to start with Commissioner Gore. Please go ahead.
Commissioner Gore.
Go ahead, please. Commissioner Gore.
Yes. Trying to raise my hand.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. 4 out of 1 or 5. Not bad. Okay. I just want to say again, congratulations, but I also want the public to understand that they were given an offer that they can't refuse from our superintendent's op-ed in donating to our district to ensure that our students are able to get computers and to be able to have the equity. I think one thing that Commissioner Moore did bring out very well is that sometimes things that look like they're bad turn for good. And so it did bring light to the fact that there was a lot of disproportionality and a lot of things that our district needed. And so I would just ask any organization and social groups and fraternities and all to take her challenge and make sure that they are helping our students. I think one of the statements I made earlier is we cannot and will not wait. Our students need it now. So thank you.
Evan, you're on mute, Evan. I had my hand up.
Yeah, no, I apologize. Something's going on here
with my connection here. I'm not sure. Commissioner Collins, please go.
Well, I was going to also compliment all of the, and congratulate all the graduates, but it is so exciting to me to look for the yard signs for our graduates around town. And I even saw some in my own neighborhood that I had no idea those kids were going to one of our high schools. So it's really fun, and I appreciate everything that everyone has done to support graduates and to make them feel like they are deserving of that diploma and the recognition for it. And so I want to thank everybody.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Collins. Commissioner Arnold.
Yes, I would just like to piggyback and on Commissioner Collins. I discovered that I have a Shortridge graduate right down the street from me that I didn't know was there. And while I do have a Washington High School sign in my front yard and I'm not a graduate, I want to say how much I appreciate and honor all of the graduates in our district. It's tough times. They've done a great job. And not even just in our district, but all over the state and all over the country. The people have been creative in figuring out how to honor these young people for their effort. So kudos to our district, but to all the districts for during this very difficult time, making these young people feel valuable, making them feel honored and appreciated. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner Arnold. I am unable to see some of the hand raisings that might be going on, so I'm just going to call the roll of those commissioners that have not yet had a chance to offer comments. I'll start with Commissioner Slack, please.
Thank you. I just like to say the same thing as the other commissioners. I'm very glad to be a part of our district at this time. I feel like that the collaboration and the partnerships that we've had so far have just been tremendous. Outpour of the community working together is exactly what we needed in the beginning. So I think it's made us a lot closer. Our family's a lot closer too. So I am just appreciative of that. And I think the more we stay positive and on a positive note, the more things are going to come and fall into our lap that we needed all along. So I am very grateful to be working with everyone. And I'm so happy for the team, the administrative team, and the people that have been on the go since it started. I think that they have done a great job of feeding our community and making sure everyone is up to date. I have been overwhelmed with just the amount of stuff that I need to do. Emails pouring in and phone calls pouring in, telling us that food shelters are here and there. And it's just been great. And I'm very proud of our district.
Yeah.
And congratulations to our graduates too. I'm so sorry. I feel so sorry for our graduates because I feel like this whole toilet paper crisis has taken over, but I'm so happy that they have come out strong in this, and the yard signs we've seen. I've also have been going grocery shopping and seen so many different signs out from different schools that I didn't even know the kids were even in my community. So it's been great. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Slack. Commissioner Moore.
So sure, I just want to say that I agree with everything that my commissioners have said, and I'm so proud of Superintendent Johnson and her staff and all the things that we have done. You know, whenever you don't hear a whole lot of negative comments, that means you must be doing something positive. So Superintendent Johnson, I have not heard a lot of negative comments, so I know you're doing great things. And so I look forward to our new leaders. Those children who are graduating in 2020, they have already proven that they're going to be the great leaders of tomorrow. And I look so forward to following behind them. And for the families and whatnot who are listening today, as the city and the state of Indiana open up, I look forward to respecting you and showing you my love. And with that, I say, I look forward to seeing you mask down, talking about what we can do to make IPS a great district, even greater than what it already is. And so again, I say, I respect you, I love you, and because I love you, I will definitely always be masked up.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Well said, well stated, well crafted. Yeah, I certainly want to as well echo the sentiments of my colleagues. I want to first and foremost thank our families and parents and grandparents and neighbors and all those just that wrapped around or continue to wrap around our children through this time period. We're just so incredibly thankful to them for everything that they have done and will continue to do, because this isn't over yet. We know that there's still going to be some challenges ahead as we continue to work through this. But I know I personally, like my colleagues, remain incredibly hopeful. I also just want to thank, obviously thank our teachers and our principals. And, this was a pivot that took place back in March that no one saw coming. This isn't just IPS, this is districts and schools across our country. And the way in which you pivoted with grace and love, and whether it was cell phone calls, Zoom calls, in the windows, outside, home visits. I mean, it's been remarkable, just some of the stories and some of the experiences that personally I've experienced as a parent, and also what I've heard amongst the community. And so we're just so thankful to you. We know you are exhausted. We know that you are ready for summer, knowing that planning is coming, if not already, for the fall. And so just want to lift you up and praise you and thank you for everything that you have done and continue to do for our kids. Also, again, staff from central office to, or central services to, again, transportation, food service, just all the people that, maybe you don't see every day that have been making this magic happen. A lot of Scott Martin's team, I know that they've been scratching and clawing to figure out how to respond and how to serve in so many different ways. And so I just, again, I'm so incredibly thankful to each of you for what you've done. School year isn't over yet, and so you will be able to breathe, I'm sure, in a moment, but just incredibly thankful to you all. And earlier I mentioned our community partners. There's just an unlimited list of you out there that have given your time, talent, and treasure to support every child in this, in our district, in our city, frankly. And so we're so thankful to you. And my last, but certainly not least, shout out is, I'll start with the 8th graders first before I get to the big show. 8th graders, congratulations. You are now moving on. This is a huge toll gate or shift and change that you're undertaking. And so I couldn't be more proud of you and thankful for you, for your patience and your grit, just keeping on moving in spite of all this is happening. I think adults probably are the ones that are reacting more. Kids are just pushing and through. And so you are models of excellence for me personally. So thank you and good luck and enjoy your summer, seeing that we won't have this opportunity again until next year. But and last but not least, as my colleagues have said, graduating seniors, congratulations. You're moving on to the next phase of your life. And so so proud to see, as so many have said, signs and just all of the posts on social media, and everything that's happening is just remarkable. And so we just tip I don't have a cap or a mask like Commissioner Moore, but we certainly tip it off to you. And best of luck as you transition into your summer months and on beyond that into the fall, whatever that might be. And so we're just blessed to have the opportunity to support you and work with you, and we wish you the best. So those are my long-winded commissioner remarks, but I'm excited about all the things that have happened thus far, and so excited about what's to come.
Yeah.
So with that being said, Superintendent Johnson, would you like to provide any closing comments as well?
Sure, thank you. I will echo all of the gratitude that commissioners have shared this evening. So thankful for my team that I get to work with directly every day. They have been incredible during this time. We start each day. We started off starting and ending each day with each other. Now we end each day with each other for the most part, so that we can make sure we're being as responsive and learning and growing along the way. So I'm just so very thankful for my team. And then for the broader team IPS, it makes me very, very proud to get to lead a district where people just step up to get work done on behalf of our kids and families every day. And there's just been no lack of commitment and effort and energy given by our team to support our students and our families. So I'm just so very thankful to get to work with great people every single day. Also want to just shout out the IPS Foundation. So as the resources are coming into the foundation, we actually have surpassed the $600,000 mark at this point. Thank you to alumni who have given, individual community members. Thank you, Commissioner Gore, for continuing to issue the challenge. Every single member of the board has given to the fund, which I deeply appreciate. And they've now launched a rapid response recovery mini grant process whereby IPS teachers and staff can apply for a mini grant to support some of the emerging needs that are coming up from our students and families in their school communities. And so really excited that even as those resources are coming in, the foundation is working just as quickly to push those things out into our community so our students and families can get those additional supports and resources. So thank you to the foundation for that continued work. Also want to just promote that we will be launching a family survey next week so that we can get information from our families about their experience with home learning during this time, but also what are their priorities as they are thinking about their children returning to school next year. So that can inform our own planning and we can know what is most important to make sure we address. So I will talk about that. My superintendent update that will go live tomorrow. We'll have it on our website, but just want folks looking out for that survey, and we'll strongly encourage and ask folks to please participate and give us your feedback and your input so that can help to inform our own planning. And then I obviously will want to recognize our class of 2020 graduates. So proud of them. I think at this point, commissioners, you would have gone to the honors ceremony and all of the different school events that happened during the month of May. And so we didn't get to experience that level of joy, but we're excited to honor our graduates next year. Some of them are students who I had when I was a middle school principal and assistant principal. So I'm very excited for those students, particularly who I got to be a part of their journey. I was chatting with some of my former students from when I taught them in 5th grade, who are now adults, one of whom just crossed the stage at IUPUI this year, another of whom got her master's this year. And so it's incredible to get to be a part of a community and see our children grow up and go on to be those leaders. So again, just so fortunate to have that opportunity to do that. And then I also did want to take a moment. We crossed that, 100,000 deaths from COVID-19 this week. And so even in these times of joy and celebration, want to also just name how many members of our community are grieving and who have experienced tremendous loss during this time, and to just ensure that we are doing what we can to be as supportive of them and to make sure that they know that we are lifting them in prayer and in positivity and with light and with love, even as so many in our community are grieving during this time. So just also wanted to name that even at these times of joy, there's still quite a bit of grief and sorrow that we know people are experiencing every day. But thank you to our community for continuing to wrap around each other and to keep each other as safe as possible as we move ahead in the days. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Johnson. So we will continue to monitor the guidance from the state and local public health officials regarding our June meetings. Hopefully we will return to holding in-person meetings in June, but we will confirm our plans in the coming weeks as we review the relevant information and guidance as things unfold. With that being said, this meeting is adjourned.
See you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Be safe.
Take care.
Stay safe and healthy. Bye-bye.